In the modern era, youth is the most significant aspect of how the culture breathes. Today, most young fans, followers of fashion, believe that they are just the consumer, that these designers of these very large brands have more authority to tell them how they're going to be in their world. And if you're just a little bit older or a little bit more informed, you see how wrong that all is.
So I want to begin by asking why fashion is the place that you chose to assault the culture at large.
Came across an interview with Corinne Reutefeldt, who at that point was in the last few weeks, few months of being the editor-in-chief of Paris Vogue. One of the questions directed to her was, how do you decide who you include into the editorial mix or content? Where she just very tersely went, you're Vogue or you're not Vogue. And my mind just immediately grasped a whole world of possibilities which I couldn't define at that point in that phrase, not Vogue.
Why not big global company X,
right,
as opposed to not Vogue? Is the assault directed at the image, or is the assault directed at the force of money?
It does represent its title completely as a, not anti, but antidote. Of course, we're coming out of the September issue, the movie, the documentary, so Anna was very visible at that point. And we were also at the beginning of the Libyan war. So Colonel Gaddafi was very visible at the same point. He always considered himself fashion forward, and he always wore signature sunglasses. And I just had this kind of just little moment in my mind, visual moment, of Colonel Gaddafi with his sunglasses on, and Anna Wintour with her sunglasses on, sitting in the front row of a fashion show. Vogue still has some Condé Nast, still has wonderful writers. They still keep a few pages in there that you can read about personalities or places, etc. But, you know, from the cover to the back cover, you basically have a few hundred pages of almost all visual propaganda. When you push it all towards the center, there's only one message. If you don't purchase these products and change the percentage of your identity from your identity developed in a free experimental manner to our corporate identity, you're never going to be considered a healthy, balanced member of society. The very young Yves Saint Laurent, the very young Valentino, etc. They were very respectful of street culture, global street culture. When they presented their collections, they wore homages to the youth of the world. Gifts. And now it's so controlled and supervised and corporate. The great experimental lab of global youth isn't such an experiment anymore. What is making it be dumbed down? When you have to report profits, because you're publicly traded companies, on global exchanges, there somehow seems to be this exact one-to-one correlation between how much money you have to operate creatively.
What we're talking about is there's a clothing industry and then there's a dwindling fashion industry.
Right.
Where there are actually very few true designers who are supported by some of these big conglomerate organisations who are really interested in profits only first. And of course, you're right, you have to make a profit, otherwise you've just got a hobby. Look at some of the designers that have been put into certain houses that don't have a traditional design background.
Right.
And maybe that's okay too. I mean, I was really surprised when Eddie Slimane was put in at YSL.
Right.
And now I'm a complete convert, because I think what he did, to your point about youth being youth, you know, he completely sort of energized it.
I would tend to disagree. He started his career at Saint Laurent. So he is a corporate, he's owned. What you finally buy is all done by completely pre-digested mood boarding. They're told, buy, you know, work boots. So they come back with $2,000, $3,000 worth of used work boots or something. And there's no designing. I just don't see any creativity at all. I just see industrial product. If he supported youth culture, he would have opened up 5 Uniqlo-sized stores in the key capital cities of the world. Then I would say he was a revolutionary. And he was beginning a process of reinvigorating youth culture around the world through his power position with these billionaires.
The point I'm trying to make is that you've got to look at things, you know, from a relative perspective as well. Because what Eddie did was actually no different from what YSL did when he created the line Rive Gauche, which was completely about the kids on the left bank.
Yeah, but Rive Gauche stores were, everything about them said, we embrace your youth and we want to somehow join your creativity. When I walk in to the new Saint Laurent shop, this guy cares nothing about global youth.
But I don't think Saint Laurent is for global youth.
There is no Yves Saint Laurent. Saint Laurent passed away. He was a fascinating, wild individual. He ran the gamut of emotions and acted them out in public, which none of these people will do. I think one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had with fashion was a Yohji Yamamoto show that was held in the Round. I think he was the first person to ever do a show in the Round. It was absolutely heavenly. I experienced all of them in their original public expressions. Stephen Sprouse to his world and his cultural environment, Alexander McQueen, and Martin Margiela, you know, all coming out of the 80s, really represent closer to, I guess, that sense of the street should dominate the creative discussion of fashion. That was the beauty of being an alternative person. It hurt. And we're so comfortable, and we want so much satisfaction, and so much recognition, and so much public notoriety. We're not used to the pain anymore.
It's like you're buying individuality, like they sell individuality. You're not an individual because you read the book, you know, or because you buy an ad. It's different than in like passionately investing in something that is truly original and that is free of that toxic, pushing money machine.
You were speaking before about sort of this external foreclosure on what the product can be.
St. Mark's Place, in a certain period, there was one shop in particular, Trash and Vaudeville, which still exists, and many people who want that look have been able to buy that look for decades from them. And they shifted to this other context. He, of course, doesn't send out a press release saying that he took this context and is representing it. He just says, it's original. Here's my original message for this collection. I think honesty wouldn't hurt him. Just saying, hey, we got out all the pictures of Johnny Thunders. You know, was Richard Hell in the front row? because just the way the pants were hiked comes from every photo of Richard. The type of shirts are Richard shirts from the 70s, how it's open, the necks, everything. To a large degree, youth is boring. How can youth be boring? I always say it's the day that Bob Pittman metaphorically threw the switch and the first evening of MTV went up, that was the end. That was the end of this earlier moment where young people were fairly unsupervised, a little bit insane, and things happened. They just were caught. The minute a corporation, a gigantic media corporation said, we decide what music you listen to, through the very powerful medium of television, was a defining moment. And that major global corporations will from now on sponsor every note of music you ever listen to. It was agreed within the people involved in our Vogue that it's like the Berlin Wall. You have to break down the wall.
What we're trying to do is bring back the idea of aspiration and inclusion.
Right.
And, you know, as opposed to this world of exclusion and homogeneity. We have been brainwashed to worship a small handful of people that have been chosen that have no effect, no positive effect, but people think they do.
If we're in an era where fashion, which is a huge business, is certain aspects of it are considered art, how come every form of creative activity has a department and a curator from the very beginning, starting in the 20s and 30s, at the Museum of Modern Art, and they don't have a curator, a collection, or a department? Why? Then young people can discover it in the context of, oh, I looked at this McQueen, there's a conceptual art piece by Lawrence Weiner, 50 feet away,
they would understand the value of fashion being art.
You look at a painting, I look at a painting. We all have to bring ourselves and our own intellectuality, our own intelligence, our own life experience. That'll come to the table, we complete the painting. But in no other place other than fashion is it so imminent. It's like you put that thing on and now you make that something else.
If we view fashion as art, as a creative act, as perhaps the paragon of creative acts, then the biggies, the guardians as you call them, who are in charge of the fashion industry.
They lose control?
They lose control because suddenly they can't control everybody with this consumer product.
I have to admit, it was incredibly poignant. Cy Twombly, the painter, whose work I've been observing since the 60s, his dealer, had an exhibition of the last complete paintings from the studio. And they were just so free of exactly what we're talking about here, any commercial message. I don't particularly cry, I'm not someone that cries, but my mind cries. There's that first moment when something begins, and there's just something that you know you can let go completely and you're theirs, whoever that artist is. There's a trust. The vision is so complete, so well thought through that you let go completely and you're theirs. That's great art. I think any one of us might say that we can believe that Patti Smith is a cultural hero. She, from working class New Jersey, not much formal education, an inclination towards creativity, could come into Lower Manhattan and somewhere be handed a copy, probably used paperback, of Rimbaud's poem. Do you think that the teenage Rimbaud thought that 90 years later, a girl growing up in suburban New Jersey was going to start a minor cultural reinvention and revolution off of reading some inaccurate translations of his writing? So I will capture the future because there's always some young person searching for some message that isn't easily in front of them or available or accepted.
Now, I'm here today because I believe you've inspired me as a modern day antidote to consumerism, which is just epidemic. Fashion will embrace you the way fashion does. It can often embrace critique and kind of digest it and shit it out as this sort of consumerist dreck.
Right.
And
Again,
so do you ever think about that? Like the way they did with punk, the way they did with grunge.
I've tried to construct a project that none of their shit can stick to. Just editing out about 100 to 150 not Vogue quotes and just letting that float into the world. That will be a weapon.
Can you think of a quote?
When a cultural revolution is drained of meaning, it becomes fashion.